Hi, Analisa 6 here with the Lady of Leosure and the Sober Curator to bring you the April 2024 astrology forecast. Hi, everybody. It's almost April. It's March. What is the date today? March 27th as I'm recording this. And yeah, we are in an eclipse portal. We just had an eclipse on the 25th at 5 degrees Libra, so that activated a bunch of energy for us. And then we're now in the Mercury retrograde shadow period. And so things are feeling pretty chaotic right now. It's just funny to me a lot of times when I'm living life and out in the world and I have things going on and I know what's happening celestially and astrologically. And then, these dates come up and our life starts to get turbulent. And I always feel like I'm kind of a character in a movie of my life that I'm watching, and I'm in it and I'm experiencing the feelings and the emotions, but I'm also watching it outside of myself because I'm like, oh, this is happening, and then people are texting me going, what the fuck is happening in the sky right now? Why do I feel this way? I need a reading, all that kind of stuff. And it's just really, I mean, all I can do is laugh. I cry too, but I feel like all I can do is laugh at just the, uh, what do you call it? Predictability of it all, I guess, the cliche of it all. Um, If you're new to this channel, I do horoscopes and astrology forecasts for my own personal blog, The Lady of Leosure, a play on Lady of Leisure. I'm a Leo, obviously, if it isn't obvious. And then I also do this content for The Sober Curator, which is a sober lifestyle magazine, online magazine. And I've been doing the content for them since we started, which was 2020. So whenever I do an astrology forecast or a horoscope, I do try to include some of it through a recovery lens. Not recovery doesn't always come up in these videos, but I do talk about recovery through these videos quite often. I also do a lot of winging it. So my prep for these videos is very minimal. Part of that is due to energy expenditure because I have some chronic health issues that kind of make it a little bit better for me to just feel intuitively into these videos versus doing all these like kind of written notes and then reading off of them. Like that just hasn't really been my vibe for a long time. So it might be again someday, but for now, this is kind of how I've been doing it. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen so that we can get the chart up for the month. So let's get this out of the way. Let's see if I can get this a little prettier here. Trying to think if I can zoom, get myself bigger. It's not the best looking presentation. I apologize for that. Maybe I'll figure that out someday. But this is our chart for April. So we've got April 1st. The transits for April 1st are interesting. So the moon is going to enter Capricorn, and we start out the month with Mercury stationing retrograde in the sign of Aries. So April, starts off in Aries season every year. We're also, in March, we had the astrological New Year, spring equinox, where we move into Aries season, and Aries represents spring, new life, rebirth. The winter is kind of where we are experiencing this introverted period. It's associated with death, with endings. And then, once we get to spring, there's this renewal, this rebirth, life, flowers blooming, plants, weather, light, the sun's coming back to longer days, all of that kind of stuff. So we're in that cycle now. And Aries is the cardinal fire sign. So happy birthday to all the April Aries. I love Aries people. I have a lot of Aries people in my life. And, as a Leo, I tend to get along with Aries very well. But your cardinal fire, if you're an Aries listening to this, you are, here to represent the will. You're ruled by the planet Mars. You're meant to initiate energy, and you're also meant to be very assertive in your energy. And, every sign has kind of this positive aspect to it and a negative aspect to it. And I even think there's positives and negatives to positive and negative. And so, Aries rules the first house in astrology, which is the house that rules the self and how we relate to ourselves, our personal identity, our relationship to identity. Aries is the sign that I think kind of flies under the radar in certain ways, where Leos, we tend to get the, rap for being the self-centered sign. Leo is actually more about self-expression, but because we like to be, the center of attention in a lot of situations, or we like attention to a certain extent. Generalization, I know lots of Leos who hate being the center of attention. I also don't like it as much as I did when I was a kid. We tend to, we want to share. We want collective validation and we want to share. Aries ruling the self actually has more to do with the self, more to do with the relationship to self. And I'm kind of talking a lot about this because we have a lot of Aries energy starting out the month of April. So I'm not trying to just give you an astrology lesson. I'm trying to kind of paint a picture of some of the energy frequency that we have in the sky in April, because not only do we have it, Aries season in the sky, but we have the North Node in Aries still. So that's, one of the energies that's ruling the eclipse season is Aries energy. We have Chiron still in Aries, which has been happening for a while now. But we also have Mercury in Aries, and Mercury is the planet that rules communication, also how we think, our perspectives on things. And Mercury is stationing retrograde on April 1st. Let's see what degree point it's at. We've got it at the 27th degree point, and it's going to go all the way back to 16 degrees. So the 27 degree point to 16 degrees is our Mercury retrograde in Aries. So that's going to be coming up for us a lot in April. And it's, I think one of the things that's kind of a bummer to me about Aries season and April starting with this Mercury retrograde in Aries is that a lot of times when we have Aries season in full swing, it's a really good time to start new projects. And we have this like rebirth, energy into this fresh new spring. I'm ready to launch a new thing or launch a new project or start a new job or move or, all these things. And with Mercury retrograde, the tagline for Mercury retrograde is it's time to reflect and review and revisit. And so, with Aries ruling the self, the identity, our personal relationship to self, Mercury, communication, perspective, thoughts, is asking us to reflect and review our relationship to self. And then wherever it's happening in our birth chart will show, kind of how that identity expression is being reflected upon. So if it's in your first house, it really is a personal identity. If it's in your second house, it's money, your relationship to self-worth. If it's your third house of communication, it's communication, and so on and so on. And so in the horoscopes, I'll get more into that for each sign, but that's a big theme for us for April. The other thing about April too is that, Mercury retrograde, it will station direct on the 25th, I believe. We'll look at more of the exact dates here later, but the universal time is the 25th. And then we're still in the shadow after it stations direct. So pretty much the whole month of April is this Mercury retrograde energy. The positive, because I always want to have optimism and positivity with these readings, despite some of the challenges, is that this is a really good time to rethink your identity. Who are you? Who are you to yourself? Who are you to the people in your life that, maybe if it's happening in a place in your chart where you feel like it has to do with relationships or how you are in your relationships, it's identity, it's your perspective and identity to self, but can be how you share that with other people, how you express it, how you communicate it. If you are thinking of redoing a business model or a brand identity, those types of things might come up for you. If it's happening in, an area that has to do with your home, this could also be like how you feel about yourself within your home environment, all of that kind of stuff. So there's a lot to reflect on in April. some of the challenges that come up with Mercury retrograde. So, in a very generic sense, we say it's not a good time for travel. It's not a good time to sign contracts or solidify anything. Mercury rules communication, so technology tends to go awry. Things can happen with our cars, things can happen with any kind of tech that we have in our homes or computers, phones, miscommunications in work, that kind of stuff, especially if it's hitting your work house. If it's hitting a relationship house, you're going to have miscommunications in your relationships. And Mercury in Aries is it's a very intense communication energy. So there's a lot of irritability with Mercury in Aries. There can be aggression, there can be anger, there can be misplaced reactivity, and maybe your reactivity you feel justified in, but the way you're reacting maybe is quick and irrational in the moment. Maybe you think it's rational, but maybe the person on the receiving end doesn't. Aries being ruled by Mars, the god of war, it's very cutting, like it feels very, in the way that it expresses itself. And, I've had a lot of Mercury and Aries dominant people in my life, and they're very unaware sometimes of how harsh or intense their energy is, even without them saying anything. There's no poker face, they think they have a poker face. They think they're doing a very good job of keeping it all under. Aries, we know, we see it, we feel it. You walk into a room and it's like, oh my gosh, what's wrong, And I think that the hard part with Mercury and Aries is that we're all collectively under this influence. So we're all going to be a little bit on edge. We're all going to be prone to more reactivity. There can also be a prone to arrogance. If you have repressed anger that you haven't been working through or dealing with, this is a time when it could be coming out. There's a lot of potential for really nasty conflict communication wise. And so things to work on. I actually bought this book when the Mercury retrograde in Aries shadow started. Even though I'm not in a relationship anymore, I thought this was a book that as a fire sign, I could benefit from reading. It's called Communicate Your Feelings Without Starting a Fight. And it was really cheap on Amazon. And it just talks a lot about ways that you can communicate anger and feelings in a healthy way. To be honest, a lot of this stuff is not new to me, but it is new to probably a lot of people that are not working on their communication. There's another book a friend recommended to me that I haven't bought yet called I Hear You. These are all really positive things to do when we're in a Mercury retrograde, especially in a fire sign, especially if you're prone to conflict or prone to fighting or yelling or screaming or having big reactions. When Mercury retrograde is in water signs and fire signs, it's a really positive time to work on how you're communicating your feelings and, working on that with a therapist, reading books about it, all that kind of stuff. But this one, communicate your feelings without getting into a fight, feels very Mercury retrograde in Aries to me. And it's just, yeah, I felt like I needed to read something like that during this time. Like, how can I be better in my communication? Because I know I have a lot of work to do in that as well. Okay, so that's Mercury retrograde. And I think it's also really interesting that it starts on April 1st, which is April Fool's Day. Like, so Mercury to me. We also start out the month with Venus in the mutable water sign of Pisces, and she's only going to be in Pisces for a few days of April. So we start out April 1st with her at 25 degrees Pisces. And then shortly after that, she's actually going to move into Aries on April 5th. So then we're going to have a Aries Venus with the Mercury and Aries energy. It's a lot of Aries energy. Venus in Aries really wants us to focus on our relationship to self and and self-love. How do we love ourselves? How do we, what is our connection to self-worth in a way that isn't about other people, So anecdotally, I'll share that I, have had a lot of issues with loving myself, and there's aspects of myself that I feel like are things I like, like if I want to get material about it, like I've always really liked my hands and my feet for some reason. Like those are things that I look at my feet, I'm like, I have nice feet. You know, certain tattoos on my body, things like that. And then there's areas of myself that I'm really critical of, personality traits I'm really critical of myself. My tone of voice, I know that I'm not a huge fan of, and I know other people aren't always a huge fan of the tone of my voice. And so things that I've been hypercritical on, and then I'm like, well, what can I do to love myself more around those things? Are there changes I can make so that I love myself more in that way? And one of the things that I was working on with a therapist, I think I've shared in a video before, was just that I found that the way I adorn myself and put myself together really does a lot for my relationship to self. Like it's not just about how I look, it's about how I feel in the act of doing it. I really enjoy doing my makeup. I really enjoy putting my jewelry together. That is like kind of a self-love ritual for me. The other aspects of self-love that have been really challenging for me to work on, and this falls more into like Mercury and Venus together in Aries, is Mercury is, you know, a lot of how we think about things. And then Venus is relational, love, beauty, that kind of stuff. And I have a really strong inner critic, and I'm really judgmental of myself. And it's debilitating sometimes. I get analysis paralysis. I criticize myself into non-action. And I know people that are close to me that I've opened up to in that way get really exhausted by how mean I can be to myself. And I think that stems from trying to humble myself or have humility, but I also was bullied a lot when I was younger. So I think that some of those voices come from that as well. And I've had to do a lot of work off and on throughout the years of catching myself when I'm in a negative mindset and stopping it, you know, and that can be really hard too. So I think Venus in Aries with Mercury in Aries is an opportunity for us to catch ourselves in what mindsets we're in. And if we have a habit of falling into these negative mindsets or really critical mindsets, what are some ways that we can build ourselves up? You know, Aries energy, like we think about in the tarot, the card that's ruled by Aries, we've got two cards. Oh, it's fine. The Ace of Wands. This is like a rebirth of self. So this is also very in alignment with, you know, spring energy. We also have, I should have gotten some cards out already. We've got the Emperor, which is divine masculine. You know, the Emperor has a duality to him that can be negative if it's expressed in an arrogant patriarchal way that's dominating and forceful in all the wrong ways, which is something that Mercury retrograde in Aries might bring out of us. But when the divine masculine is expressed in a positive way in Aries energy, we have a sense of power, confidence, authority in our lives in a way that really makes us feel empowered. You know, it's good. And so where do we find that? How do we build that up in ourselves, right? Where's our ability to own who we are in a way that's authentic, pure, and confidence boosting? And I'm doing a lot of work on myself with that specifically right now. Like I feel it with Mercury and Aries. And Venus in Aries is here to help us kind of extend that. Some of the things that we have to be really mindful of with Venus in Aries and Mercury in Aries is that there's so much self-focus that our relationships can suffer if we're not being mindful about how much we're being pulled into this self-focused energy. So how do we balance that? How do we continue to honor and appreciate our relationships while honoring the self? You know, if we think about the other is ruled by Libra. So, you know, we've got the South Node in Libra starting off April, and we just had that eclipse in Libra. We are really reviewing our relationships. You know, there's the relationship to self, and then there's also the relationships that are mirroring back to us, whether or not the self is in alignment with those relationships. And if we don't feel like with the direction we're moving in or who we are authentically to ourselves is in alignment with the relationships that we have in our lives, we might be feeling like it's time to cut some cords. These could be relationships like marital partners, boyfriends, girlfriends, you know, obviously if you're non-binary, like just your partner in life romantically or partners romantically. This can also be business partners, friendships, really close personal friendships might be, you know, somebody might not be fitting into your life anymore. And the other can be said too. You could also have new people coming into your life that are more in alignment. with the direction that you feel like you're heading in. And it could still be a confusing time in that way because Mercury's retrograde. You know, we're reflecting and reviewing. And sometimes I think when we're in these like kind of crosses in our life, we feel all this pressure because Mercury in Aries and even Venus in Aries, we're going to feel a lot of impatient energy. We're going to feel a lot of like, this needs to happen right now. It's, you know, fire signs and cardinal fire energy. It wants everything now. It wants to move really fast. It wants now, now, now. And we have the sun in Aries too. And the thing that's really a lot as a double fire sign and as somebody with a lot of fire people in my life, bull in a china shop. You know, I'm going to come in and I'm going to know what I want and I'm going to want it now. I'm going to go after it. I'm going to make it happen and I'm going to destruction. It's going to happen all around me, but I know this is what I want. This is what needs to happen. And then once the dust settles and all this time goes on and you look back, you realize that you maybe could have slowed down and didn't need to do everything quite that intense, you know, and that maybe there were some things that you missed. It's really common for me watching other fire people and knowing that I've been this way in my life at times too, is that that sense of urgency and that sense of needing everything now and needing to rush things, the whiplash that that does of the reflection of like, oh God, if I had just stopped for a minute and smelled the roses and really valued what I had going on, I could have continued to move in the direction I knew I needed to move in without leaving behind this wreckage or leaving behind, or maybe I didn't need to change everything so drastically to still get this need met. And I've had that in my life. I've definitely looked back at things in my life and gone, wow, okay. It's kind of like not like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Like you don't need to necessarily do that. You can still grow and move forward without blowing everything up around you. And fire signs have a really hard time with that. We tend to really feel like if we don't get what we want or we don't make this happen now, that like something's going to happen. You know, we're not living authentically in some way. It feels very threatening. And so we're all in a collective bubble of this Aries energy that's very, you know, it can be very volatile. So it's important, you know, that you kind of stop for a minute, smell the roses, think about things, you know. Another thing, Mars is in Pisces at 7 degrees starting out the month of April, and Mars is going to be in Pisces for all of April. We've got Saturn in Pisces for all of April. Obviously, Saturn's going to be in Pisces for the rest of the year. And then we have Jupiter still in Taurus, Uranus still in Taurus, Neptune still in Pisces, and Pluto in Aquarius. So let's go ahead and start talking about each week. That's something that I do in these videos. It's a lot, but that's what we do. If we look at the transits, I don't go into every lunar transit in this video. I just talk about kind of some of the main transits that happen. So we have on April 3rd, the moon's going to be in Capricorn and aspecting quite a bit. It's going to enter Aquarius. And then later in the morning, or I guess it's early morning for Pacific Standard Time, we're going to have Venus in Pisces making a conjunction to Neptune in Pisces. And that's going to be happening, it looks like, at the 27 degree point. So Venus conjunct Neptune in Pisces at the beginning of April. Oh, this is such a great energy for creativity. Venus is exalted in Pisces. Neptune is one of the rulers of Pisces. And if you are an artistic person, a musical person, a creative person, what a great energy for channeling more of that into the ether. Dreams are enhanced, you know, visions are enhanced, all of those things. So if you have had any kind of blockages around your creativity, you could start to feel some of that move forward in a way. And also with this, you know, reflect review of the self, if you're thinking of rebranding the self or needing to kind of refine the self, you have so many opportunities to dream that up or envision that and figure out how you want to bring that forth. Some of the downfalls of Venus conjunct Neptune is that we could be in a state of illusion. I'm sorry for that noise if it's in the video. I live in the city again, and there's a lot of noises. So Pisces wants to escape reality through love, beauty, art, also substance abuse. And so if you are somebody who chases the romantic and those kind of mystical feelings, mystical experiences, there are unhealthy ways that you could want to indulge that, especially if you're prone to alcoholism or substance abuse. So, you know, the healthier version of that is meditation, sound baths, meditating in water, taking a bath, going out in nature, playing music, writing music, those types of things. Let's move forward to the 4th. So the 4th is when Venus enters Aries, so not the 5th. We have the moon in Aquarius with Venus entering Aries in the evening. And we already talked a lot about that, so I'll move on. Let's see here. On Saturday, the 6th, Venus in Aries is going to make a sextile to Pluto in Aquarius. Venus and Aries sextiling Pluto and Aquarius, there is a desire for a lot of transformation and change when it comes to our relationships and how we relate to the groups of people that we associate ourselves with, but also that deep transformational healing around our relationship to self. You know, we feel a need to change. We feel a major need to change as a collective. It's not just on an individual level. Aries makes it an individual experience. Aquarius makes it a collective experience. I don't like getting political in my videos. I'm not a political astrologer. I'm not an electional astrologer, so I don't talk politics. But, you know, we've got a lot going on politically this year and a lot going on in the world that this transit, I'm sure, is, you know, enhancing that energy quite a bit. You know, Aquarius wants revolution. Aquarius wants change. Aquarius wants us to build upon the old ways or completely destroy the old ways and create something new and something different and something better. And then with the Venus, you know, in there, that's our relationships. And with Venus and Aries, a lot of it has to do with our relationship to self and how that's bumping up against other people. So yeah, we might be feeling a big need to overhaul things, and it might feel good. We might feel like we're ready, and that feels like it's time for us to do that. The moon is going to enter Aries on the 7th and join that Aries party. So there's a lot of energy there. And then the next day on the 8th, it's our solar eclipse new moon at 19 degrees Aries. This is the main transit of the day, and Chiron is going to be in the mix. So if we look, we've got, you know, Chiron, the moon, the sun, the north node, Mercury. And even though Venus is not conjunct this, she's still in the stellium, right? Because she's in Aries. So it's a big day. New moons are a time of setting intentions around something that we want to call in. It's planting a seed. And so we're not going to see the fruit of what we were planting. We're literally planting a seed. And we're telling the universe, this is the intention that we can set for this moon, that we are ready for this new self to begin to take form in the imaginal realm. The imaginal realm is where Pisces lives. I mean, we've got Mars in Pisces, Saturn in Pisces, Neptune in Pisces, Lilith in Pisces. And we're in this state of being able to really envision the future self. Who is this future self that we want to cultivate? What are they about? What do they look like? What do they do? And we're able to speak to source and say, okay, I'm telling you, this is what I want. This is who I am, and this is what I want. You're not going to see it yet. It could take years to see the full fruition of this person, but the energy is telling you, you know, it's like the Magician card. This is the other Aries card. Let me find Magician. I love the Magician in the Mother Peace deck. They actually modeled the art after Patti Smith, and I just think that's really freaking cool. I'm still really bummed I never saw Patti Smith when I was living out in the desert. She performed at Happy and Harriet's a couple of times while I was living out there, and it would have been really cool to see. But we've got the Magician here. This is the energy of this eclipse, this new moon eclipse. Who are you? What is your power? How do you utilize your power in your life to create the life that you want? It's the one. You know I have the power to create my reality. How am I doing that? what's the story that I'm weaving? What's the story that I'm telling myself? So that's a big energy for this solar eclipse. The next day, we're all going to be in a solar eclipse hangover the next day. The moon is going to enter Taurus and hopefully kind of help us feel a little bit more anchored. On the 10th, we have Mars making a conjunction with Saturn in Pisces. And so, you know, it's interesting. Mars and Saturn are both considered to be malefics in traditional astrology, which means that they are challenging, you know, challenging planets. And so in the sign of Pisces, we might be feeling a lot, and it might be feeling very chaotic after an eclipse. We could be in a space where we feel like we're confused and unsure of exactly what we want to be doing. We know to some extent, but we still are in that vision, you know. This is a really good day, I think, to lean into your imagination and kind of what I'm Pisces moon, so I really think about visions. You know, I'll be laying in bed and I'll just get a download in a way where I just feel like this is something I need to do. This is something that I want to do. And it'll be a whole picture of something. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know when I'm going to do it, but it becomes kind of this longing feeling of something that needs to happen. And I think that that's Pisces. It's very Piscean. We might be feeling that way during the eclipse, and after the eclipse, change needs to happen. I feel this new sense of self. For some people, it could be in your work. It could be in your family dynamic. It could be your home. It could, you know, so many things. It depends on where it's hitting in your chart. But, you know, this is another time too, where Piscean energy is the energy that rules escapism through alcoholism and substance abuse. It's not uncommon for people to relapse when they're having these transits hitting them, where they feel this existential crisis, this existential dread. If you don't feel anchored, you know, find an anchor in a friend, in an organization. You know, I joined AA for the first time November. I've been sober 8 years, but I felt like I was free falling. I needed something. I grabbed onto AA. It's been really good for me. For some people, it's religion. For some people, it's, you know, a book, you know, or some kind of spiritual meditation group, a support group, those kinds of things. So if you're feeling some of this existential dread or crises, those are good things to lean into. If you're a creative artist, anything like that, this is a positive time to channel your feelings through your art and through your music. Thursday, we're going to have on the 11th, Sun conjunct Mercury. So this is called a cazimi in astrology. And this is an interesting transit because, you know, Mercury is going to be retrograde during this cazimi. And so we might be feeling, the thing about the Sun Mercury cazimis in a sign like Aries is that we're more assertive and reactive and aggressive with our communication, for better or worse. It really depends on where it's hitting in your chart, what it's aspecting, and whether or not that energy is needed. I see this transit and I'm just like, I really hope that I don't need to go be out in the world a lot, because people are probably going to be like, I think about when I lived in the Bay Area, and there's a lot of microaggressions in the Bay Area and a lot of big aggressions in the Bay Area. People are very aggressive with their communication there. And when we would have these big transits like this, it would elevate. And I just would be like, I'm not leaving the house, or, you know, just dumb stuff would happen. People just yelling at each other over the dumbest stuff. So that's kind of what comes to my mind, is like people having meltdowns over things, people feeling very cranky and irritable, and just not being able to contain whatever's going on inside, and having a lot of energy to just blah, you know, all over everybody. A lot of opportunity for conflict. April 12th, moon in Gemini, making aspects. The moon enters Cancer on the 13th. We just have moon in Cancer making some aspects on the 14th. And then when we start out Monday, we have Mercury making a conjunction to Chiron and Aries. So Chiron, in the chart is considered to be the wounded healer. Wherever Chiron is, there's a wound that needs healing we're working on. So Chiron and Aries this whole time is, bringing up identity wounds for a lot of people. And, Mercury conjunct Chiron, it's like maybe that day that the sun and Mercury had that Kazemi, some stuff got brought up. We said some things we didn't mean, or somebody said some things they didn't mean to us. And we're having to sit with the humility of our communication patterns. I mean, I think about this book again, communicate your feelings without starting a fight. Like Chiron conjunct Mercury and Aries, like let's figure out how we can be grown-ups with how we talk to each other. I can't tell you how many times I've had an emotional reaction to something and I felt like I had to be that reactive to get heard because the person on the receiving end is just not listening to me. And I look back on that and I wish it's embarrassing. Like, I don't want to be emotionally reactive. I want to be calm. But I think active listening can also make or break, if you're actively listening or not, can make or break whether or not somebody has a big emotional reaction to you. So a lot of times I think our emotional reactions happen when we don't feel heard. And so we feel like we have to elevate, it's, I think, really common for, women, in very like stereotypical types of relationships with their children or their husbands or boyfriends, where we get put oftentimes in these situations of nagging that we don't want to be in, but we end up, caregiving, cleaning, working, and there's so much invisible labor that society expects us to do that men a lot of times aren't even aware of how much our sense of self-worth is wrapped up around these things that they don't even realize that they're creating for us too. So, if I know for me, like the way I treated my mom is very much how I felt like I got treated in relationships. And it was a learning experience for me, but it didn't change the fact that it was happening to me. So if I become a nag, and let's say I ask something a couple times, like, hey, will you, put your dish in the dishwasher instead of leaving it in the sink? Like saying something like that really nicely, just being like, hey, could you do this, for me or next time or whatever? You're really cool about it the first couple of times. And then by the 10th time, you're like, oh my God, why am I still saying this? Right. And you start to elevate over something really stupid. And that can happen with anything, whether it's something stupid or something legitimate, when you say, hey, when you talk like this to me, it hurts my feelings. So we find a different way to talk about this. And if that person continues to do it, you're going to get angrier and angrier and angrier until you are just not nice about it, And it doesn't justify being not nice about it, but it's like, when you're not feeling heard, you tend to elevate. So there's two different things going on in that dynamic. There's the person that's not listening and not respecting, and then there's you who's not feeling heard, who's elevating and needs to find a more constructive way to maybe communicate. Both people have to do that work. And I think with Mercury and Aries conjunct Chiron and Aries, we might be in that place of reflecting on how we need to heal some of those communication dynamics. Why am I escalating? Why am I reactive? What is the root? Am I burnout? Am I taking something out on somebody they don't deserve it? And that's because I'm feeling burnout. So that's something to think about. The moon is going to enter Leo later in the evening on this day. And then it's going to be in Leo on Tuesday and Wednesday. And then it will enter Virgo on April 18th. Got a lot of transits there. And then April 19th is when the sun is going to enter Taurus. So we enter Taurus season. Happy birthday to all the Tauruses out there. Taurus is the second sign of the zodiac. It's fixed earth. And Taurus rules the second house, which is the house that rules money, our values around how we make money, our relationship to material stability and self-worth. Taurus is ruled by Venus. Its tarot card is, well, people would argue that the Empress is also Libra because the Empress is just ruled by Venus. I always really feel a lot of Taurus energy in the Empress, but the Taurus card is actually the Hierophant. But I think we can look at both because, you know, Taurus being ruled by Venus, we'll look at the Venus card and we'll look at the Hierophant. So here's the Empress card in Mother Peace. It's so, I'm a Leo. She looks so Taurus and Leo, you know. We've got the green emerald, you know, she's got the mirror. It's very Venusian, very Libra too, you know, in that way. So that's one of the cards for Taurus in terms of the fact that it's Venus card. And then we have the Hierophant. Let's see. Trying to find it. I didn't know I was going to pull tarot cards, but I had them right here, so why not? Then we've got the Hierophant, which is considered to be the Pope of the deck. Got the Mother and the Pope. Those are the cards for Taurus. Let's see if there's anything else. Mars in Pisces is going to be sextile Uranus and sextile Jupiter on this day as well. Sextiles are harmonious, but we know Mars is not a harmonious energy always. I mean, it rules action, determination, willpower, but it also can bring up some challenges and kick up some dust. Uranus also is the planet that rules change and destruction, surprises. When Mars and Uranus come into aspect to each other, there's usually accidents or things that happen that aren't always good. Even though it's a sextile and it's harmonious, we still need to be really mindful and careful on this day, especially since Mercury is still retrograde. I will say the positive aspects of Mars sextiling Jupiter and Uranus that I like is, you know, with Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus, which is ruled by Venus, and Venus in Aries, so much about how like we present ourselves and how, you know, that vision that I'm talking about in April, where we're envisioning a new self that we want to build and kind of take form and imagine. And it can be through art, through expression of self, or how we put ourselves together in some way. Mars is here to kind of drive that energy forward. Excuse me. So, you know, reflect, review, like, who are you and how are you, you know, relating to self in that way. I'm going to get more into the specifics of how this is impacting each sign when I do the horoscope. So it's very general right now, but, you know, depending on where it's hitting in your chart will kind of show where these catalysts for change are happening. On the next day, the 20th, we have Jupiter making a conjunction to Uranus. We're already kind of in this bubble in the days leading up to it. Jupiter and Uranus have been moving towards this for a little bit now. And, you know, in Taurus, Jupiter is the planet of expansion and growth. Uranus is the planet of change, destruction. You know, Taurus wants everything to stay the same, but Jupiter and Uranus are like, nope, things are not going to stay the same. You are growing, you are evolving. And again, this growth and evolution, you'll have a better idea of knowing how it's impacting you in your personal birth chart if you get a reading or if you look at the horoscope. So that's that. Later in the day, the moon is going to leave Virgo and enter Libra. See, April 21st, we have Venus now making that conjunction with Chiron in Aries, and then the sun in Taurus is squaring Pluto in Aquarius. So there's a lot here, I think, around, again, it's this journey of self in relation to other, what relationships are serving us, what relationships aren't, what identity wounds are we trying to heal. You know, I'll say that there's been a lot of relationships in my life that have had a major impact on how I see myself and how I relate to myself, and ones that have served me and ones that haven't. And it's interesting to watch how people kind of change in your life. I've had people show up in my life and serve a purpose where they make me feel really good about myself. And I'm like, wow, this relationship's really helping heal some stuff for me, you know, especially as somebody that was bullied a lot when I was younger. When somebody comes in and really accepts me for me and when I feel seen, it's such a healing experience for me. And if that same person flips and turns around and changes their tune, it's a really damaging experience, obviously, as it would be for anybody. Or if I meet somebody and I can tell that they don't get it. They don't see me, they don't get it. And they're not even trying to. They've got a judgment and I can feel that judgment. I don't want it to affect my self-esteem, but it does. I can feel it. It's almost like an osmosis of energy when you're in spaces. I mean, I think here's a great example. You know, it's like if you live in a society where your innate self is not accepted, you know, if you're gay and you live in a community where you're not allowed to be gay, that's something you have to hide in yourself. That's very damaging to the spirit. You know, it does something to you that's very damaging. When you find your people, you know, the LGBTQ community, you get to be loved for your full self. That changes everything. You know, they do those studies on, you know, the way our words and our energy affects plants. You know, like they'll show a plant that's been loved and spoken to in a nice way and watered and all of this, and they'll show the same plant, but maybe it's on the same watering schedule. It's the same, you know, but different plant, but there's negative energy given to it. And the one that's been loved and all the positive energy is like flourishing, and the one that's been said all these negative things is not doing very well. It's kind of that same thing, you know, the people that we surround ourselves with, and even if they're not physically sane, they could be thinking these things, you know, the psychic kind of thoughts. That has an effect on us. It has an effect on our health, our bodies, our nervous system. And so, you know, we might be in this space of really reflecting on how our relationships are influencing our self-esteem and whether or not we're around the right people. And whether or not we need to change that. Like, what do we want to change? There might be some of us out here too, where it's happening on a bigger level than just our own relationship to self. It could be the community element in the way that I was kind of discussing too. What's your relationship to your community? What's your relationship to where you live? You know, I think that we don't put enough emphasis on how important where we live is. I love my family, but where I grew up and, you know, where I like lived was not a positive place for me. And there's places that I've wanted to live that weren't really positive for me either. And there's places that I've lived that were weirdly positive for me, and I didn't know they would be positive for me. There's energetic frequencies to places. And I think it's really important that we find these energetic frequencies that feel in alignment with the frequency that we want to be in. And I think that these transits on the 21st are bringing a lot of that up for us. I think April has a lot to do with that. April 22nd is Earth Day. The moon is in Libra during this day, and we'll be making a lot of transits. And then on the next day, on the 23rd, we have a full moon at 4 degrees of Scorpio. This is a really positive time for us to be, you know, reflecting on kind of what I was talking about in terms of, you know, what are we feeling in alignment with? Are we in the right kind of spaces? And Scorpio energy is all about releasing and letting go. Scorpio is the sign that rules the 8th house, that rules death and rebirth, sex, you know, our relationship to some of the more subconscious areas of ourselves and how we relate to the metaphysical on a certain level, and, you know, our relationship to sex within ourselves. And it's a time, full moons are a time for calling things in a manifestation way, but also releasing and letting go. And I think in the sign of Scorpio, there is a larger emphasis on letting go. The death card is the card that rules this moon, this lunar energy. And the death card, you know, there could be a literal death that we're feeling grief over. There can be a metaphorical death that's happening, you know, where it's more about the death of a certain part of ourselves, and that we really feel that we're, you know, saying goodbye to a chapter of life that, you know, is not going to be there anymore, you know. So those are things that we're going to be experiencing on the 23rd. Let's see. This moon also is squaring Pluto during the day. So Pluto's the ruler of Scorpio. So is Mars. And so, you know, Mars is going to be in Pisces, kind of ingressing towards Neptune. And, you know, it's an intense energy because, you know, at some point, I think it's on Thursday, the moon is going to make an aspect to Mars. Yeah, it's going to trine Mars on Thursday. So we're feeling a lot of change and a lot of need for kind of finding, what's our relationship to community? What's our relationship to the, groups that we associate with that Pluto and Aquarius? Do we feel like we need to evolve and grow into some new territory? Tuesday through Thursday, like this is a really strong energy for us. We're really ready to release something and let it go. And, what's interesting about this cycle is that on the 25th, Mercury is going to station direct, at that 16 degrees Aries point. So it's interesting that this lunar energy where we're kind of like feeling the release and we know that there's something we need to release, Mercury comes in and says, all right, you released it. You've had this last 3 weeks to really think about who you are and what you want to do and what needs to go. Let's move on with our lives and get to it, So the 25th, we're going to be in that space where, we're still in the shadow for a little while, but we're in that space of really coming up out of the challenging 3 weeks that we had starting out April. And, it's been longer. I mean, it's the end of March right now. We're in the shadow period. We just had an eclipse. Like this eclipse is really kicking it off with that shadow that we had on the 25th. So literally the 25th to the 25th, like we're, going through it. I feel it already. 26th, we've got Moon in Sagittarius. 27th, Moon in Sagittarius is making a lot of aspects to things that we're not going to get into. On the 28th, we have the Moon entering Capricorn in the evening, and then, or no, I'm sorry, early hours of the morning. And then in the evening, we're going to have Mars in Pisces making a conjunction to Neptune in Pisces. Again, Mars in Pisces is activating the will in the Piscean frequency that can have us in two different places. We're either envisioning these great things that we want to put all of our creative, spiritual energy into, or we're existentially kind of blown out and trying to avoid reality. Both things could be happening. Neptune here could make things really confusing for us too. Maybe we're coming out of this Mercury retrograde and maybe we feel a little bit lost. We feel a little bit like, what was that? What just happened? I thought I was here and now I'm here. Like, what am I doing? Those are some themes, but it's important that we lean on our anchors. Find your anchor is one of the things that I always feel during these types of transits. The 29th, we have Venus entering Taurus. Venus is the ruler of Taurus, and so this is a really welcomed energy. We were talking about that Empress card. It's very much feeling. It's what should I say? What does Gen Z say? It's giving. It's giving Empress is what Gen Z would say. This is a really powerful time for us to focus on our relationship to our bodies, our relationship to health, our relationship to nature, food, comfort, money, all of those types of things. And let's see. I think that's all I have to say there. The next day, we're going to have Mars entering Aries. So here's where I'm feeling excited seeing this energy, because Mercury, we're still in the shadow, but we've moved out of retrograde. We're in Taurus season now. There's an anchor there. Venus is now entering Taurus. There's an anchor there. And then Mars is moving out of the mystifying, confusing energy of Pisces. It's very emotional, and it's going into its home sign of Aries on the 30th. The moon's also going to be entering Aquarius. Mars in Aries, this Aries energy is going to get its oomph and directed more in the way that it needs to be directed. Still going to be intense because Mars in Aries is intense, but we've got some fight now. We've got some fight in the game, and it's a little bit more clear. It's less discombobulated. We know where to point our arrow, is what I would say. Venus is going to be squaring Pluto on this day. So challenging for relationships. Venus squares to Pluto, whether they're happening natally or collectively, make any relationship that needs to kind of be cut out or completely transformed. It's there, it's happening. And Mars in Aries, there's a lot of action there. Yeah, so, you know, it's challenging for sure, but I'm appreciating the fact that we're moving more into an action-oriented direct place with a lot of this energy versus this kind of limbo, you know, kind of state that's been murky. Thursday the 2nd. Oh, I'm getting into the next month. That was it. April 30th. I'm not going to go forward. Don't want to talk about May yet, but wow, what a month. We end April with Mars entering Aries and Venus squaring Pluto. That is intense. Very, very intense. April's probably going to be one of my least favorite months out of the year. I'm not going to lie. We have quite a few more months this year that I'm not really looking forward to, but you know, I think the optimist side of me really wants to say that this is such a powerful time for us to really step into who we're meant to be right now on all fronts. You know, who are you meant to be in your life right now? There's a lot going on in the world, and we have a lot of opportunity to really reflect and review in April if we're showing up authentically and if we're showing up in a way that we want to. There's going to be people that use this time in a really destructive way. If your ego is at the front seat of the helm, it's going to probably be not so good for you this month. Those of us that I think are trying to be more self-aware and reading books like this and trying to learn from these experiences, we're still going to have a challenging time, but it's a really good opportunity for us to gain some humility and kind of see where, you know, we need to take more of a, what's the word? The director seat of our life, you know? I would say April's about finding that. How are you the director of your life, you know, the movie of your life? And for the right reasons, you know? And what does that mean to you? What does the right reasons mean to you? I think I'm going to stop there. It was a lot. If you are interested in booking a reading with me to go over April transits in your own personal birth chart, you can email me at Analisa6@ladyofleosure.com. I will have that information in the description. I charge $100 for a 1-hour astrology session with me. They are conducted over Zoom. And you can find me also at thesobercurator.com. All right. I wish you all well, and I will see you guys next month for the May astrology forecast.